Alright guys, so this is another Patreon request, and this one comes from Lamonta Benson, who asked me to do my top 10 worst DC events. So this is a top 10 list, so this is going to be a little contentious. But as always, before I go any further, if you guys like to have a Patreon request done, just hit the link below, head on over to my Patreon, you guys can start sending me requests for videos to do here on YouTube. But other than that, hope you all enjoy this, let's get started. But always with top 10 lists, it's important to remember that this is just my personal list, and if you think something should be higher or lower, or totally not at all on the list, because trust me, I've got some contentious ones on here, there might be some contention on this list, and there were some other ones that almost made the list, but I was like, because here's the thing, DC, I love DC Comics, but I am fully aware that DC does really shit events more than Marvel. Marvel has some fucking stinkers. Let's not forget Marvel has some really fucking stinkers when it comes to events. But most of the time, they're either really good, or mediocre. Ever so often do you come across one that is monumentally bad. Civil War 2. So, DC, on the other hand, they have mountains of terrible events. Or just boring events. Or just bad events. It's very rare to come across a good event. A really fun event. So yeah, and 2 on this list, maybe more, are a little contentious, but remember, it's just my personal opinion, and if you think something should be higher or lower on the list, that's totally fine. No problem. Just let me know in the comments below what your top 10 worst events are. So let's get started with number 10. And this is relatively a new event, and that is Event Leviathan. Event Leviathan by Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev was the culmination of a Superman storyline going on with Leviathan. This book is goddamn boring and predictable, which sucks too, because you'd think Bendis would do a lot more of like the street-level characters, you know, but clearly that's not the case. It's clear Bendis should not do events anymore. I really don't think he should do major events anymore. I think it's past him, and this was very predictable. This was a very predictable, like, who's Leviathan? Who's the new Leviathan? Oh, we know who it is. And it's kind of insulting. Most of the time. And it's just boring. So there you go. At number 10, Event Leviathan. Number 9, Heroes in Crisis. So, I have a little defense for Heroes in Crisis, not by much. I don't like this event. But at the same time, one of the major reasons why it bothers me is because this is the embodiment of corporate interference. As you guys know, originally, Tom King's original idea for this was like to talk about superhero and mental health. You know, superheroes dealing with mental health. But along came the upstairs, Dan DiDio, Dan Dickhead, as we all know him. He decided to have some marching orders of having Wally West be the bad guy and kill off some favorite generational characters. Why? So, I think this could have been a good event. I truly believe this could have been a good event, but it has the potential. It has moments. It has really good moments, but at the same time, I really do think this book just got just too many fingers in the pie, and it just got fucked over. And the story makes no goddamn sense because of it. It's boring. You figure out the killer. The reasons are heartbreaking, and it just really does more It took some serious work to do to do damage control on Wally West after this. Let's be real. Anyway, moving right along to okay, this is going to be a big one. Whenever I said this list may be a little contentious to everybody, well, here's where we're starting off big. Doomsday Clock. Hear me out. Doomsday Clock was billed as the major, massive crossover between Watchmen and the DC universe. Like, Dr. Manhattan's been revealed as the person who's created the New 52, and it will lead, and also, subsequently, like, the events of Rebirth. But here's the problem, is that, yes, delays did happen, but it also is really tough, and this is coming from someone who who thinks Watchmen is a bit overhyped. I do appreciate the story, it's not for me. But the whole point this comic literally misses the whole point of Watchmen and just says, the world would be so much better if Superman was in it. And I'm like, yes, but like, you missed the point of Watchmen on so many levels. Also, does anyone else feel just a little bit like Jeff Johns does not like magic characters because he just has he just has them Dr. Manhattan shit talk them. This isn't the first time this has happened either. So that, and again, I feel like this was an unneeded sequel that didn't need to happen, but again, it's potential. But after rereading it and seeing everything else, I'm like, okay, very clear you did not. I know people who are major Watchmen fans and vehemently hate this book, so I understand that there are people who like this book, but personally, I read it and I was like, this was the most unneeded sequel to Watchmen I've ever read, and it misses the point of Watchmen. And this is coming from someone who's not a fan of the book. I appreciate what it did for the comic industry. I acknowledge what it did for the comic industry and what it did for comic readers and writers on a whole. But I'm just not a fan of it. But I do acknowledge it had a point. And Jeff Johns clearly didn't get the fucking point. Yeah. So Doomsday Clock. Oh boy. Anyway, moving on now to... I got the list. I'm reading it. Number 7, Emerald Twilight. I know people, look back at Emerald Twilight and look at it yeah, it's a cool Green Lantern story, but you guys don't understand the amount of bullshittery this was. Yes, it did have some good sides, yes, it did bring in Kyle Rayner. It brought in, it would eventually lead to Hal Jordan cycling back to being a great character, to being a major character under Johns. But the thing of it is that at the time, that story arc was cooked up literally on a weekend, and Ron Mars was just thrown onto it to write it at the last second. That's it. That's all. That was it. It's a 3-part story that makes little to no sense of just Hal goes crazy. Yes, I know Parallax was influencing him, but I'm talking about in the context of the time. I'm not saying oh, now it makes sense. Parallax was manipulating him the whole time. But if you're a reader back in the 90s and you were reading Green Lantern, you're like, this makes no fucking sense. He just, Hal just goes crazy after a mental breakdown. The Guardians stiff him after calling him the greatest Green Lantern, and then he just goes on a killing spree. That's what I'm trying to say, is that, yes, they do explain why that is. They retcon why that is with Parallax and all that. But at the time, it's I'm talking about of the time. That, if you're a Green Lantern of the time, or a DC fan at the time, you're like, what the fuck was that? That is the most half-brained book that's flying by the seat of its pants, and by God, it shows. So, moving right along to number 6, and this is where I feel like I'm going to get some pitchforks thrown at me. Flashpoint. Wait, hear me out. Flashpoint, yes, it's a seminal Flash event, and it brought in the New 52. I'm aware. That's one of the reasons I'm knocking it, is because it brought in the New 52. Again, more of Dan DiDio's, meddling. But really, this is some of the most edgelord shit I have ever read. This is, I have read some really, some books, but I've read some really fascinatingly bad books that just say, hey, this is just going to suddenly retcon everything, but at the same time, it's going to be uber edgelord and make it and don't you just hate it? Don't you hate this timeline? We're going to rebuild it in a new way, and you're not going to like it for over a decade. And I'm like, thanks, I don't like this at all. So I'm more mad about what it brought in, and the fact that it's Jeff Johns clearly going back to his emo days and just Wonder Woman and Aquaman were lovers, and she killed Mara, decapitated her, showed off her head, and then it's like some edgelord's pipe dream of what so it's Zack Snyder. That's it. Yeah, it's a Zack Snyder movie. And again, let me ask you something. Can you ask if you're a major Flash fan, can you ask any comic book fan and ask them Flashpoint, and they'll say they only know Flash from Flashpoint. That's the ones. Hell, the fucking movie is based off of that. The fucking upcoming movie is based off of Flashpoint. So that's literally anyone knows of the Flash is because of Flashpoint. It's that one story. Now, does that say that Flash probably needs a better, some better comics or better stories? I don't know. That's for a story for another time. But, like, yeah, there's a lot of things wrong with Flashpoint. Ushering in the New 52, which apparently Johns did want. Like, that was Johns' idea. And also, like, yeah. And how, like, superfluous. And also, like, then we had to redo Damage and say, like, no, it wasn't. And then, that's the thing. Flashpoint then later became pointless. Because Jeff Johns says, no, it wasn't Barry or Pandora. It was really Dr. Manhattan. Yeah. And when you really think about it, Flashpoint was really superfluous. And I was like, then what was the fucking point of having Pandora at all? Ugh. So, yeah. A little contentious on number 6. But I think from 5 through 1, I think we can all agree on these ones. Number 5, Convergence. Let me ask you something, just real quick. What do you remember about Convergence? Like, no, really. I'm asking seriously. What do you remember from Convergence? Don't worry, I'll wait. Oh, fucking nothing? Yeah, that's why. And I was really tempted to put, like, as a side note, Future's End can also fuck off, too. That book can also just completely fuck off. That's honorable mention fuck-offery right there. But the reason why I put Convergence so high is because does anyone fucking remember it? And also, it serves no point because, yeah, it said like, oh, the New 52 is part of this universe and the Pre-52 universe is over there. Well, no, it's not. And, yeah, this comic got retconned so hard out of existence, it was hilarious. So, yeah, this comic was literally just trying to be Secret Wars, but failed miserably. Ugh. Next up, at number 4, Armageddon 2001. Let's reach way back to the late 90s and talk about fuckery. This book is, when you really get down to it, it's a mess. It's just a fucking mess. It is the biggest load of bullshit ever, because it was just more like, hey, Captain Atom's book is ending, let's make him a villain. Oh shit, it got leaked. Hawk is really the Monarch. Woo, so scary. Yeah, and I was like, Hawk? Really? Of all the characters... If you're a DC editor, let me ask you something real quick. If you were to pick a character... If you just had this information of Captain Atom, your guy who was going to be the Monarch in this event, just got leaked, and you had to pick a superhero to be the Monarch, who would you pick? And I understand the reasons why they picked Hawk, because that book was also not selling, from Hawk and Dove. I understand that, but like, if you're a major executive at DC Universe and you just had that reasoning of, oh shit, our big reveal of Captain Atom being the big villain of the story got leaked, let's have Hawk... do you go rationally and say to yourself, I want Hawk to be the Monarch? At least go with some other powerhouse, like, reveal it to be like, Shazam, or, Captain Marvel, or, Batman or something. Jesus fucking Christ. And I know there's a story like, oh yeah, Wave Rider revealed that, like, he touched Batman and didn't see anything. We could say, like, Batman, like, Monarch manipulated or something, I don't know. You would have had, like, a more interesting character than Hawk be the Monarch. Yeah. And that comic is just let's look at fun timelines, and Wave Rider just walks around doing fuck all. That's what it really should have been called. Wave Rider does butt fuck nothing. Anyway. Moving on now to number 2, Countdown. Remember how cool the 52 comic was? For 52 weeks, it was awesome storylines involving, like, John Constantine and, Renee Montoya becoming the Question? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. And all this other cool stuff of all the lesser heroes getting times to shine. Well, fuck that! It's time for Countdown to Final Crisis, which I was thinking of putting on here, but I'm like, Final Crisis I actually enjoy to an extent. It's not a good story, but there are parts of it I do enjoy of Final Crisis. So it is, and besides Event Leviathan, I just hate it a little more. Anyway, so yeah, Countdown is really bad. It just is like fuck you and fuck everything that you liked in that 52 weekly book. Well, here's Countdown, and we're going to do some fucked up shit. And fuckery they do. Fuckery they do. That's all I need to say. So, you may be thinking, what's my number one worst DC event? And I thought about it. I really did. What's one... And this is something like I know people are going to say, like, you know, oh, I hit number 2. That was number 2. I forgot to mention number 3. I'm stupid. I skipped over number 3. Shit. Number 3 was Amazon's Attack. Real quick, that was, you know, Amazon's Attack is just a bad event. It's character assassination on the Amazons, on Wonder Woman, and in the long scheme of things, why did we need it? That's really all I can say about Amazon's Attack real quick. I'm so sorry. I'm in a lot of pain, and I'm trying to keep my mind focused as long as I can. But going back to number 1. Number 1, for me, and this is like on a personal level, I thought about, like, what event bothers me the most? Like, what event do I personally not like? Like, that's the thing. Like, if this is my list, then it's something that bothers me on a certain level. And I kept going back in my head to this one event. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I really don't like it, and that is Identity Crisis. Identity Crisis is a great-looking book. And it brought in its defense, I did like the Justice League run that came afterwards, and a lot of it involved my boy, Red Tornado, you know, respect. But Identity Crisis is such a fuck you to the DC Universe that it's not even funny. This comic involves Sue Dibney getting raped by by Dr. Light, Deathstroke wiping the floor with characters you know he wouldn't wipe the floor with, characters pointlessly dying. It's such a mean-spirited book at times. It really does feel like a mean-spirited book, and it's a mystery that becomes pointless, and also, like, what the hell is all of this? Yeah. It's maddening of how bad it is. And it's so mean-spirited to a lot of, like, lesser DC characters. Yeah, I just every time I went back in my head when I was making this list, and Lamanta requested this a while ago, but I really had to think on making this list because there were some really, like I said, DC, when they really miss the ball in events, they really fucking miss the ball. But in my head, I was thinking, every time I thought through all these events, and I was like, yeah, it's always been Identity Crisis that I've always hated the most. So yeah. Identity Crisis, are there worse events? Yeah, way worse. But for me personally, Identity Crisis will always stand out to me as the one that I always say when I look at that in shops, I go, fuck you! Fuck you! So yeah. So there you go, guys. I know this is going to raise some eyebrows, especially some on this list. But you guys tell me in the comments below, what are your top 10 least, most hated events, DC events? Just comment below, let me know. I'd like to thank Lamanta Benson for this Patreon request and continued patronage. But other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in Multiverse.